This is J. Krishnamurti's first public talk at Brockwood Park, 1969.
I really don't know why I'm sitting on the platform. I feel we all ought to be sitting on the ground with all the rest of you. But there it is. It isn't a position of authority. I think that must be very clearly understood from the very beginning. I'm not sitting here as a Delphic oracle, laying down the law or trying to persuade you to any kind of attitude, action, or thought. But since we are all here, and apparently we are fairly serious, since you have taken all this trouble to come to this distance and all the rest of it, I think we ought to, if we may, find out why human beings right throughout the world live in isolation, divided by their particular beliefs, pleasures, problems, ideals, belonging to different sects and groups, communists, socialists, labor, Christians dividing themselves into innumerable sects as the Hindus, the Buddhists do. Why we live in this sense of separation, this sense of duality, opposing each other at all levels of our existence, resisting each other, bringing about conflict and war. This has been the pattern of human beings throughout the world. The artist, the military man, the musician, the scientist, the so-called religious man, business and so on, the nationals, the racial prejudices. And we have lived this way, probably from the very beginning of time. And one wonders whether it must be always be like this. Because this way there can be no peace. This way man must be at war with another. Though they talk of love, peace on earth, and all the rest of it. So, is it possible for human beings who are at all serious to find out if they can live in a state of non-duality, not ideologically, theoretically, but actually, in a non-verbal state, but both in form and in essence. Whether it is at all possible for you and me to live a life in which this sense of duality completely ceases. not only at the verbal level, but also at the deep layers, deep recesses of one's own mind. Because I feel if this is not possible, then we must be at war with each other. You with your particular opinions, beliefs, and dogmas and conclusions, and I with mine. And so there is never real communication, never contact. This is going on right throughout the world. The Guru with his particular disciples, disciplines, the societies, the sects with their particular dogmas and all the rest of it. And here we are, confronted with this issue, not ideologically, but actually, because that's the only, one of the major political problems is the unity of man, of mankind. It's all possible. And whether human beings, individuals, you and I, can live a life in which there is no duality at all. In which opinions do not divide people, beliefs, conclusions, resistance. I don't know if you ever put that question to oneself. And if one has ever, I wonder what one would say to it. Deeply, not in any sense of verbally, intellectually, but with one's heart, with one's whole being, what one would respond to such a question. Can we go into that this morning? Can we freely inquire together into this question? Because communication and relationship are always go together. If there is no communication, there is no relationship. Not only between you and the speaker, but also between each other. If we merely remain at the verbal level, at the formal level, that communication is very superficial, doesn't go very far. But to be related at the non-verbal level requires the ending of this isolating dual existence, the me and the you, we and they, the Catholic, the Protestant, and so on, so on. having put the question, shall we go into it and see non-verbally and also in form, outwardly, whether it is possible to live a life in which there is no sense of separation, division. To inquire into that, one must be aware of oneself. Because what we are, the world is. The world is not separate from us. The community, the collective is not separate from each one of us. We are the collective, we are the community, we are the world. Again, at the non-verbal level, we may state it, we are the world, but to feel it, to really have a feeling that we are utterly part of this whole world. And to go into this question, one must inevitably be aware of the whole structure and the nature of oneself. Not only inwardly, but outwardly, in form, in word. Knowing that the word divides. It's the first time we have the airplane here. As we were saying, the word divides. The Englishman, the Frenchman. Opinions divide. Conclusions, in any form, also bring about separation. Isolation. Obviously, beliefs and the various sectarian divisions as the Catholic and the Protestant and all the rest of the business. Outwardly in form, the word. My sitting up here does divide. And inwardly, inside the skin as it were, there are also various forms of division, separation. Whose very essence is the me, the self, the ego, put together by thought. Can this process of which one must be aware, both outwardly as well as inwardly, can this thing be understood and be dissolved? I think that's probably that's the major problem in the world. Not the economic problem. You are in this country, social security, welfare state, and all the rest of it. The people are divided, each going his own particular way, in his own problems, isolation, pleasures. Exclusiveness, and so on. And so becoming aware of oneself both in form as well as inwardly, can this isolating process, this resistance, really be dissolved? Because it's really a very complex thing, this. Because thought divides. It's the very nature of thought is to divide, is to bring about fragmentation. As the observer, the experiencer, the watcher, and the thing watched, experienced, and thing observed. The space that is created between the observer and the observed. That is the division, right off. And that division is brought about by thought. We're not saying this dogmatically, but one can observe it. Experiment with it, test it out. And as we said, there can be no communication as long as there is division. And what we consider, what we call love, if it is the product of thought, or hedged about by thought, that very love divides. And when one becomes aware of all this, what is one to do? How is one to act? There must be the exercise of thought, logically, sanely, healthily, completely. And yet, that very thought cannot obviously create division. So that's one problem. And if there is sensitivity, which is part of love, then thought has no place in it at all. Knowing that thought brings fragmentation, separation, division. So how is one to live in a world that's completely divided and glories in this division, separation? How is one to live? So that there is complete harmony inwardly as well as outwardly. Moment we have a formula, a system, that very system and formula bring about a separation, your system and my system. So the question of how doesn't come into this at all. If I say to myself, how am I to live? With great sensitivity, which is the very essence probably of love, and how am I to act, do anything without bringing about separation? When I ask myself, how am I to do it, the how implies a method, doesn't it? A system. By doing this, you will do that. You will achieve that. This harmony, this state of non-duality. But that very word, the how, breeds division. That is, there is the idea, an ideology, a formula, which thought has conceived as being harmonious, living without division. That is the final achievement. And there is the separation between that and the actual state I am in. And the how is the medium, the way to that. So the how immediately breeds division. Separation between what should be and what is. So, if one can discard completely the how the method, the system, the practice. Then there is no ideology at all, the idea what should be. There is only then what is, and nothing else. The what is that the way one lives, feels, thinks, acts, loves, is an act of, is a way of separation, division. That is the actual fact. Now, how is that fact to be transformed into something which is non-dualistic? Sorry, there's so many flies. I'm glad you're also bothered by it. Can I observe the fact that my life is dualistic, separated, isolated? However much I may say to my wife, I love you, it is, I live in separation. Because I'm ambitious, greedy, envious, full of antagonism, hatreds, and all the rest of it boiling in me. And that is the fact. Can the mind look at that fact non-dualistically? Me, as the watcher, looking at it as though it was something separate from me. Can I look at it without this separation? Can the mind look at it not as an observer, not as an entity that wishes to change it, transform what it observes, but to look at it without the observer. Can my mind look, the mind, I want to call it my mind, the mind, can that look without any conclusion but observe? Observe the fact only, not what thought says about the fact. The opinions, the conclusions, the prejudices, the judgments, the like and the dislike, the feeling of frustration, despair, when you look at that fact. Just to observe without thought reacting to what is observed. I think that is real awareness. To observe with such sensitivity in which the whole brain, which is so conditioned, so heavily burdened with its own conclusions, ideas, pleasures, hopes, and all the rest of it, to observe with the brain completely quiet and yet be alive to what it is observing. Am I making myself somewhat clear, or is it all rather complicated? Because one observes what is happening in the world outwardly. The divisions, the separations, religious separations, political separations, divisions, this war that's going on all over the time, all the time, not only between two individuals, right through the world. And one wants to live completely at peace, because one realizes conflict in any form doesn't, is not creative, it doesn't bring, is not the ground in which goodness can flower. And this world is part of me, I am the world. Not verbally, but actually, inwardly. I have made the world has made me. I'm part of this society. And the society is being put together by me. And is it possible to live a life and act, think, feel, so that not only in form outwardly, but also deeply inwardly, there is no isolating process taking place at any time. Because then only is it possible to live in peace. Not vegetate, but be highly alive, thoughtful, sensitive. In what way is one to act in daily life without this division? To behave, to talk, to use the words. That doesn't create the division between you and me and in myself. Surely, it's only possible in being totally aware, being completely sensitive, not only what is going on inwardly, but also outwardly. The manner of my speech, the words, the gestures, the act. To be so aware demands a great deal of energy. And has won that energy. Which means how is it possible, again the word how, I'm sorry, I withdraw that word. One realizes a great deal of energy is necessary to be alert, aware, sensitive, to understand this separative, dualistic life of resistance, to be so alert needs a great deal of watchfulness. And that means energy. Both physical energy as well as the energy of thought, the energy of great sensitivity. How is all this energy to come about? Knowing that one wastes energy in useless talk, indulging in various forms of images, sexual and otherwise. The energy that is spent in ambition, competitiveness, all part of this dualistic process of one's life. And society built on this competitive, ambitious way of life. So can the mind and the brain also, can this whole structure, which is the me, be aware of all this? Not bit by bit in fragments, but totally. You see, that is the real meditation, if I can introduce that word rather hesitantly. So that the mind is aware of itself and not creating the observer, the outsider who is looking in. That's only possible when there are no ideologies at all, no sense of achievement. That is, no sense of time. There is time only as evolution when there is this sense of what is and what should be. And all the effort, the strain and the struggle to achieve what should be, that is great wastage of energy. Just to perceive that, just to be aware of this fact, that thought, not knowing what it should do with what is, however ugly, beautiful, whatever it is, what is in oneself, not being able to understand it, not being able to go beyond it, has projected the idea what it should be, hoping thereby to overcome what is. And to overcome what is, you must have time. Gradually, slowly, day after day. So there is this very way of thinking brings about a vision, a separation. Now, just to observe that, to be aware of it, not what you should do with it, not how to overcome it, but just to be completely aware of it, highly sensitively. I think that's all the mind can do. To be actually aware of this dualistic process going on all the time, and aware how this dualistic separative state comes into being, and watching, being alert, sensitive to only to what is and nothing else. If there is hate, anger, ambition, just to be aware of it, not try to transform it. Because when you try to change hate or anxiety, fear, then in that process there is the me who is changing it. But if one is able to observe hate or anxiety, fear, without the observer, just to observe, then this whole sense of division of time, effort, achievement completely comes to an end. And therefore one can live in a world, inwardly both outward and outwardly, in a state of non-dualistic, in a non-dualistic state without resistance. So I've said it. Now let's get on. Can we discuss this, though there are going to be discussions on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Can we go into this by asking questions? Not that I'm an authority, though I happen to sit on the platform, unfortunately or fortunately.
One of the complexities of this line of thought you have pursued, for me, is that if you are looking at the world as it exists today, and you want to live peacefully within yourself, and yet you feel as part of society you are responsible for what goes on in the world today, how can you ever live peacefully, or even with any degree of happiness, knowing the terrible and heart-rending things that are going on in the world today?
I hope you have all heard the question. If I am responsible for this whole mess, and I am, the war in Vietnam, the Middle East, the racial riots, the prejudice, I am responsible for that. Because I am part of that. I have contributed to it. I have built it by my nationalistic and all the rest of it. And the question is, how am I to live peacefully when I have brought about this mess, this confusion around me, for which I am responsible? That's the question, isn't it?
Yes, that is.
I have to change myself, that's all. I have to totally and completely transform myself. Is that possible? As long as I consider myself an Englishman, a Hindu, or whatever it is, or belong to a particular group, sect, belief, conclusion, or ideologies, I'm contributing to this mess, to this madness around me. And can I drop these conclusions, prejudices, beliefs, dogmas, completely from me? To drop it without effort. Because if I make an effort, I brought in again to this dualistic world I've entered. So can I cease to be completely a Hindu? Not only in form, but in essence. Outwardly and also inwardly, and all sense of competitiveness. The hierarchical approach to life. Compare myself with somebody who is more clever, more rich, more brilliant. Again, without any sense of overcoming. Without any sense of effort. Unless this is done, I'm part of this mess. And this change is not a matter of time. It must happen now, immediately. If I say I will gradually change again, I fall into the trap of a division. So is the mind capable of observing the fact that I'm competitive, wanting to fulfill with its frustrations, fear, anxiety, guilt, and despair, and all the rest of it. Watch it, see it as a complete, total danger. And when one sees something very dangerous, one acts immediately. One doesn't say as one approaches the precipice, well, I'll go slowly, I'll think about it. You just wander away from it. So do we see the danger non-verbally, but actually the danger of separation? You belonging to something and I something else, with your beliefs, with your isolating pleasures, sorrows, problems, and I with mine. As long as this exists, we must live in chaos. So the question is, living in this rather mad, sad and despairing world, with the occasional burst of joy and the beauty of a cloud and a flower, can there be total, complete change?
Asking us to be silently aware of what is seems to be asking too much. The pain of what is seems to be much more than we can bear for any length of time without trying to escape from it. It just seems to be too much to handle.
To see what is a bit too much without trying to escape from it. We can't tolerate it. We see perhaps the implications of what is, and that's too much. So we need not a complete attention all the time, but sometimes to be inattentive. Indeed. If I can't stand something, I must leave it for a while. Let's leave it for a while. Take rest from it. But during the rest period, be attentive of your inattention. Do you understand what I mean? I'm jealous. Let's take that very common thing. I give all my attention to it, see what is involved in it. Hate, fear, possessiveness, domination, isolation, loneliness, the lack of companion, all that, jealousy. And I observe it non-dualistically. If I give my total attention to it, I've understood it completely. Therefore, needs to be no rest from it. I've understood the danger of it completely. Therefore, I've gone away from it. It's only when I don't give my whole attention, but only partial attention, then I get tired of it. And I say, my Lord, I must have little rest from this beastly business. And so I escape from it. So knowing that we escape from it, we are suggesting that knowing that you are escaping, knowing in that escape there is inattention, be aware of that inattention. Leave your jealousy, but be aware of that inattention while you are escaping. So that that very inattention becomes attention. It sharpens the mind. Is that enough for this morning? We'll go on tomorrow, so, and there are going to be discussions.